Hi, welcome to my comparison of the Deepmind 12 and the Juno 106. When I say comparison, I'm not looking at them which is better than the other. What we're going to do today is take a look at how you emulate the vintage tones from a 106 on a Deepmind 12. So the Deepmind 12, as I think we all know, was inspired by the 106. I think it started off as a clone of the 106 and they've decided actually it wouldn't be that difficult to alter the pitch of the sub. It wouldn't be that much more difficult to add a couple of envelopes and then put a modulation matrix in there. And then actually maybe we can add some effects. The price of all that's still not impacted on what the price of putting 3 envelopes on this would have been back in the 80s. So it's been inspired by it. It looks the same, you know, it's got the same sort of sliders as well. The livery is very similar, the sort of design, the layout. So although it's not going to sound exactly the same, it's not designed to sound exactly the same. It's not like the Mini Moog Model D and the Behringer Model D and the video I did of that where they sounded absolutely like spectacularly close. I'm not expecting that from this. What I'm doing is showing how to emulate these sort of tones on this. So there are quite a few differences just from the start. This has got an ARP and a sequence, so we're going to ignore that. We're going to ignore LFO2 because this has only got one LFO. And then we're going to just have a look at how you'd program the oscillators and the envelopes and the filters to act like this. So the DCO on this is similar to the DCO on that, in what you've got oscillator 1, which is either a square or a pulse or a saw. On this you've got a pulse or a saw. You have no levels on them, you just have the LFO modulation amount for the pitch, or you have the pulse width modulation, manual or LFO. And the range. So this is just the 2 sliders and the on and off buttons like this. But you also have a bit in the menu as well. So in the menu is where the range is, and this switch is effectively in the menu as well. But that switch you can have manual, LFO1, LFO2, envelopes and stuff like that. So you just keep that on LFO1. And then on this we have a sub. On this we do have oscillator 2, which is effectively, if you think of it as a sub that you can alter the pitch on, you can change the width of the pulse and you can modulate the pitch of it as well. So these 3 sliders don't exist here. So if we just knock all those down to 0, and then you've got just the 1 level which you have on this. On this it's a square and it's an octave below. If this is down here, it's an octave below and it's a square anyway. If the tone mod's on 0, it's a square. If you move it up and down, you change the width of the pulse. And then noise, we've got noise on both. So oscillator sections are although this is much more flexible, very similar, and you can see how this is someone's started off making this, or making a sort of clone of that, and thought actually the sub, let's just stick a pitch on it, let's alter the width of the pulse. Makes it much more flexible, obviously lots more sound you can make through that. Then we go to a high pass filter, which is over here on this. The VCFs look very, very similar. So you've got frequency, resonance, envelope amount, LFO amount and keyboard amount, exactly the same over here. And we have this switch for inverting the envelope, which you have the button there. This is more flexible, as everything on this is more flexible. You've got a 2-pole mode and you can go into edit and you can add velocity sensitivity, pitch bend frequencies, select different LFOs to use on this, stuff like that. And then we come across to the envelopes. On this you've got 3 envelopes in total. On this you've just got the 1. So if you're going to use just the 1, if you're going to emulate this, press these both together and now they act the same. So the first thing to do is start creating sounds. Let's have a listen. So program and compare brings up the default program. And I've set this up to look like what the default program is. It's everything's on 0 except for the frequency and the VCA level, and the envelopes are set like that. So the first thing we would do to start emulating this is put VCA and VCF on together. We'd go into the VCA and we'd take off velocity sensitivity, and we'd go into the VCF and we'd take off velocity sensitivity there too as well. I'll be able to tell, but I've no difference. Ooh. So straight away, they sound identical. They're not going to throughout this, but just from the default patch, nice way to start. Another thing to note is if you're going to emulate this, go into Oscillator 2, edit that, and put the key DN reset on. And what that does, it makes sure that the sub on, because the sub on this will start at the same time as the waveform will start at the same time as the oscillator. So that's just making sure that acts the same. So now effectively we've set this up to act like this. The other thing is the VCF is programmed initially in the default to use LFO2. So let's just go in there and knock that down to LFO1. There we go. So now this is set up to be one of these. And just to show how similar they can sound, let's add a bit of sub. Let's just listen to the saw and the sub. So we're starting off on the right track, aren't we? Let's then listen to the oscillators. Let's go just jump into the Sawtooth. Let's turn the sub off. So we have and looking at the oscilloscopes, lovely clean sharp edges. Sort of like the perfect saw, you'd say, would you? Let's have a look at this. Slightly rounded edges, but I'm not sure if that makes any effect on the sound. Don't think it affects the timbre. Maybe it does, but it's a saw, you know. We're not getting into too much complexity here, are we? Let's have a look at the frequency analysis. It's hitting about 5K. Mental's quite loud. Let's have a look at this. Almost identical, I'd say. This has got a little bit of higher frequencies as we move up the keyboard. It's going up to around 17. Around 10, let's go up another octave. 18, would you say? Hitting 20, but the lower end. 5. Under 5. About the same. So as we move up, let me just give this a wiggle just in case it's got anything to do with the keyboard and I've set that up wrong. No, so this is slightly duller, warmer than this. This is a slightly more bite, maybe, would you say? One thing I would say is that I'm not really bothered about 4-octave keyboards. I'm not interested in the least. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4. So my Prophet 6 got 4 octaves, the OB6 has got 4 octaves, and it never really bothers me until I try and compare on 2 keyboards. I'm never sure which octave I'm playing. But I generally wouldn't use a 5-octave keyboard in a mix. I'd use mid-ranges for some sounds, bass on other sounds, leads on other sounds, and effects high up and low. You know, I wouldn't muddy things, well I don't anyway, by playing big chords. So I never find it an issue, and I don't play live, so it's fine. And this is a lovely, neat, light package. So a lot of people don't like 4-octave keyboards. To me, it's a good way of making a smaller, cheaper keyboard. So from the saw perspective, everything looks. I don't know if it's the shape of the saw or if it's the filter that's creating a slightly duller tone on that. It's not a bad tone, it's just slightly different to this. Okay, let's move on now to the square, or the pulse. So if we put it on manual, let's make sure this is on manual, go into edit. Yeah, it's on manual. So there we have a square wave when it's on 0. Square wave again. If we move, so let's look at this first. If we move from 0 to 10. It's a really good square at the bottom there. It doesn't close very much at the top end, but actually with this, when I use an editor on the Mac, it goes to 0. So whether it's anything to do with the parts in this are a little bit old, or whether they all do that, I don't know. Looking at the frequency analysis, nice clean square. Go higher up, those sort of intermediate harmonics come in more. And at the very low end, it's sort of really weird and fizzy, but I don't know if that's the frequency analysis. If that's just the Logic standard EQ doing that. Let's have a listen to this one. You can see on the oscilloscope there, it's slightly curved, and apparently this is made from a ramp or a sawtooth wave being sort of chopped to give the pulse. See that on the oscilloscope. Now I've noticed that high up, quite similar. This is giving less of those sort of intermediate harmonics. Giving more, it sounds a bit buzzier. Like sort of your perfect square sound, isn't it? Buzz going on in that one, but as we get lower down, they change. This has more buzz. Well, I'll show you. Those intermediate harmonics are really quite loud there, and it's got like a grit and a bit of dirt in there, hasn't it? You can sort of hear like I don't know, it sounds like a little pops and crackles. It's really nice. It's like my Kawai 100F. It sounds old and dirty and nasty and analog. That sounds cleaner and crisper. Which is interesting. You'd expect this one, with being the newer synth, to sound cleaner, but this sounds cleaner. But odd that they change places as they go up the keyboard. Both nice, not one better than the other, but just to know if you're playing pulses or squares at the low end, this doesn't sound exactly like a 106. Okay, over to the sub then on this. The sub, as I say, it's a square and it's an octave below the main oscillator, so. And looking at the oscilloscope on that, it does actually look different to the square, doesn't it? Let's just double check that. Oh. Like a really sort of perfect, they've got real flat tops on those. It's slightly slanted, and apparently they are different. They're not the same. Obviously they're not the same. Otherwise they'd have when they made this as flexible as the main oscillator. But they're made in different ways, and they do sound slightly different. On this, there's a vast difference though. If we look at the sub on this, or oscillator 2, we should say. And it's got that sort of shape to it. It's got those curves on it, but I don't think you hear the curves. I think what our ears hear is the change from the positive to the negative. When we compare that with this, that's a lot dirtier. Crackling there, aren't we? So let's just put them at the same pitch. Fuzzier, that's the oscillator 1. Oscillator 1. Sub, much cleaner. Gritty that is. I like that. I like it. I know it's not the same as this, but it's got a good rasp to it. It sounds like it's been smoking for years. So the sub on that sounds more like the sub on this. So anyway, as long as if we leave the pitch on 0 and just use that as a square wave, we're acting like the 106. Next up in the DCO section is the noise. So that's brighter. That's what I think. That's pink and that's white, but I like this more. This has got more bite to it, and it's really good for percussive sounds. They cut through the mix much better. Don't know why I'm playing different keys. It's the same sound no matter where you play. Anyway, just to note. So any sounds that you try and recreate with noise aren't going to sound identical, because this obviously is a little bit brighter. Next up, I'll just mention the high pass filter. So we've got the high pass filter here. On this, you've got 4 settings: 0, 1, 2, and 3. And there's nothing in between. So just 4 straight settings. Let's listen to a Sawtooth. Then we knock a little bit of the bass off. And a little bit more. Now the interesting thing with this is at 0, it's not just straight. At 0 is a bass boost, and it distorts the oscillator. So we'll look at this. So this is at 1. 1 is flat, and 0, bass boost that distorts the oscillator. Try that on a pulse as well. So this emulates that with this boost button. So we've got sort of continuous from 0 to 10, which is much nicer than this clicking from 1, 2, and 3. Maybe let's put an oscillator on. And that actually is a much more effective high pass filter. It's taking more of the bass off. So if we just look at what this can do. I wouldn't take that much or more over 7 if you want to emulate these sort of sounds. Wouldn't take it much over 6 actually. And then let's listen to the boost on that. So let's knock it down to 0. Oddly with this, you can have the boost and move that up. So if you're going to emulate this, you have the boost on and that on 0, or you take the boost off and you move it. But with the boost on, you still get, well, I'll show you, you still get the distortion on the oscillator, but then you can take some of the lower frequencies out as well, which this can't do. So it's either boost on and 0 or high pass up to 6. So let's just show you the boost on this. Distorted it again, and let's see it distorts the pulse. And what you'll notice there, or maybe you've noticed, is that it's got a lot more boost in there actually. Much more bassier, isn't it? It's got more balls, that. There's a different sound to it, isn't there? And it's the distortion that's acting on the oscillators there. Slightly changing the tone, so this is more of a... That's more of an O sound, and that's more of an E. O, E, O, E. So if you're using the boost, you're not going to sound identical, but we can still get close. So let's take that off now while we play with the VCF. So the VCF, we can see here, frequency resonance envelope LFO keyboard, frequency resonance envelope LFO keyboard, and invert the envelope. So very similar, obviously designed, you know, from the basics of this, hasn't it? This has also got 2-pole, which is lovely. I do love a 2-pole filter. I miss not having it on a Prophet 6. I had it on the Rev 2's got it and the Prophet 8's got it, but I do love it. So useful for pads and stuff. But anyway, we're gonna leave it on 4 poles, so emulate this. So let's again use a Sawtooth. It's got more harmonics in it. It's a good way to listen to the filters. And let's just do some sort of filter sweeps then. Let's start with this one. Sort of disappears around 3, and this could be the old pots in this. That's still there at 0. That feels so much smoother. This feels really stiff and horrible. This feels nicer to use actually, because this disappears off as I'm nearing the lower third. But that's still got some movement in it, some play in it, which is good. But they sound quite similar, don't they? Yeah, playing the wrong keyboard. Let's add a little bit of resonance then. So the first thing we should notice when we add resonance is that you lose a bit of the bass and the volume drops. Because that's the Roland way. Exactly that. So let's try and, I don't know, 50% resonance, see where we get to. I'm just playing around there to feel the character of it. So they're in the same ballpark, aren't they? Let's knock it up a little bit more to about number 7. Yeah, that's stepping, can't you? I wonder if that's just the fact that it was 128 MIDI values and it's going through them. I don't know. Or is it picking out the frequencies? Picking out the harmonics, I mean. Sounds a bit more resonant, that. Let's have a look at the frequency analysis. Do the same here. Yeah, there's a lot more peak on this one, isn't there? Put this one up a little bit more then. So that's still on 7, and now this is on 8. There's more resonance in this one. Knock this one up further. Taking it up to 90%. But this resonance is going off the scale now. Yeah, it's great, isn't it? Ow. Just hasn't got the extra bit this has got. It's like this one's going up to 13. Whoa. So to emulate this, keep your resonance down there around the sort of 8 or 9. Don't whack it all the way up. Yeah, I'd say just under 8. One note on the LFOs. Although this has got 2 and this has got 1, for certain sounds you will need to use 2 LFOs, and that's because on this, the pulse width modulation ignores delay time. So I'll just show you that really quickly. Put a delay time on, no delay time. If we do that on this, so put a delay on it. And that's obviously because this is so much more flexible, and you can send LFO1 to various things through the modulation matrix. So changing that just for the PWM would have been a bit churlish, I suppose. Okay, let's start just taking a look at making some sounds then. Let's start off with a standard Sawtooth. Nothing special here, just a Sawtooth with a little longer envelope on it. Definitely in the same ballpark. Snatching coming into play in this, and the poly modes. So this has got more oscillators to choose from. So this is picking up sometimes the end of an envelope instead of starting at the beginning. So looking at the manual, I can't see a way of limiting this to 6 voices. If you want to limit it to 6 voices, buy a DM6. Let's just have a look at doing a sort of simple PWM sound then. Let's turn that into a PWM pad. But again, same ballpark. Now, this is where I love this chorus. I've not mentioned the chorus yet. We've gone all the way across, but not that far. And this does something really special. So we go into effects, just use the standard setup here and go into type and find chorus. There we go, chorus, mix level, mix at 100%. Now they're really similar, aren't they? And I know TC Electronic are bringing out a Juno chorus pedal, or I've seen teasers of it. So I wonder if this is similar algorithms or the same algorithms, but I was quite shocked really, because the amount of chorus plugins I've got and nothing comes close to this. And yet straight away, that's brilliant. If we press chorus again, we go into the menu on it, and the speed on there is about 0.2. I've found if I turn it up to 0.3 or 0.4, beautiful. And actually this does sound nicer because it's got 12 voices. Where they're jumping in. It's where the Juno gets a bit nasty, but this is great, isn't it? And then of course we have chorus 2. Just turn it down a little. So chorus 2 on just a straight saw. It's going a bit mental with the PWM. So for chorus 2, what I've done is I've turned this up to 1.5. I think it just increases the speed of that. I've had a little play with it. Putting the speed at 1.4 gives me similar to chorus 2. And that's pure Juno 106 gorgeousness. Let's see if we can do it on this. And the answer is yes. That's lovely, isn't it? I'm really impressed with that. I love these sort of sounds.